Welcome to the Dylan Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Sessler. My co-host is Cognizant.
How you guys doing?
We are here to help change the way the world looks at mental health, self-development, overcoming adversity, all the things. Just here to have a great conversation, realistically. Thanks for joining us. This is episode 10, where we have an incredible guest lineup for you. My guest, we go way back, all the way back to like Gary Vee. And we'll talk about that. But my guest is 28 years old from Ontario, Canada, diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy at 9 months old. He's a disability advocate on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. He doesn't allow his disability to hold him back. And just one of the most resilient guys I have ever met. I love him. We're connecting again, and this is going to be such an exciting conversation. His honesty and enjoyment of life are literally contagious. This is why we connected. And my guest has his own podcast called Hot Seat with Cognizant Clay. That's pretty much his brand name. So if you probably already know him, it's pretty easy to introduce an incredible man, Clay Terrio. Clay, thanks for joining me, brother. How are you?
I am great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me, by the way. I appreciate it.
Just, living the dream. As usual. But Clay, I'm gonna ask you to kind of just introduce yourself and tell us about who you are, what you do, and I just want to give my followers some context as to where I know you from, because it's kind of an interesting story. Like, I met you completely online. I was watching Gary Vee do Tea with Gary Vee one day, and I was like, wow, this dude Clay's super cool. I love him. And I connected with you on, I think it was on Instagram, and Instagram or Facebook, and we started just chit chatting, like, let's do something together. Let's collab. And all of a sudden we did an Instagram live, got to know each other, just hung out for a while, and man, it was awesome. Since then, look at where we are.
Yeah, I think it was Facebook. I think you messaged me on Messenger, and we just, we scheduled a Zoom call to get to know each other a bit, and kind of just went from there. It was kind of a totally random thing. I was totally blown away that I was on Tea with Gary Vee. I was quite nervous at the time, but like you said, I do my own podcasting for disability awareness, and I kind of started that through the pandemic. Was looking for something to do, and I felt like the disabled community was very misunderstood and very misrepresented.
For sure.
And the pandemic definitely magnified that. So I just started, and I've done, I think it's 43 episodes now. I've had all sorts of different guests, athletes, celebrities, people with lived experiences with disabilities. I even interviewed Katie, who I met through you.
Yep.
And it's just been a blast, and I really enjoy it. I'm not nervous at all anymore. I just love talking to people, and it's really taken off, and I'm really enjoying it. And I just took a program actually for accessible media production, which will get me a job, which will be the first job I've ever had at 28 years old. That's just how hard it is to get a job as a disabled person. But I'm not doing it to make money. I just do it because I enjoy it, and I want to raise as much awareness as I can, really.
Right. Yeah, Kyle, we got some catching up to do. 43 episodes. We only got 10. We got work to do.
We got a haul.
Clay, I got a couple questions. Obviously we've connected in the past, but there's some new stuff that's happened that I want to know about. 43 episodes is no small feat. What have you learned over 43 episodes that you can bring to people, right? Because you just introduced yourself to new people that may not ever know you. What can you tell them about, whether it's disabled community or not? What can you teach these people that can really help them? What do you think?
Well, there's so much to speak on it, because it is such a broad, people think disability, they think a wheelchair. Well, you're in the mental health world, and depression is a disability as well. They're not all visible. So that's definitely one thing I really have sought to do, is teach people, it's not just wheelchairs and walkers and accessibility devices. It's there, like diabetes is a disability, dyslexia is a disability, like it's everywhere. And honestly, I've learned a lot about myself. I think I thought, well, what difference am I going to make? But then I started realizing, you know what, it's not about what the quality of the video is or whatever. It's about the content that's in there. And I think Gary Vee is a big proprietor of that since I've been watching him, is like, just do it. Like, you don't worry about what it looks like. It's just, people are going to watch it, whether it's 200 people or a million, you're going to get people watching, and it's not going to happen overnight. So that's definitely one thing. And then just teaching people about the different disabilities, whether it be physical or mental, is another thing that I think I've done a very good job of. A few of my podcasts went an hour and a half, 2 hours. So, I mean, it's up there.
We know a little bit about that. We just had like a 2 hour and 10
2.5 hours.
Yeah, 2.5 hours with Henna, man. I mean, what a great conversation. Like, when I love that, like, you know, some people are like, yeah, you got to keep your podcast super short, but I'm like, I'm not that kind of person. Like, if you don't want to listen to a 2.5 hour podcast, you probably don't want to listen to me in general. So I'm fine with that. Like,
because we like to talk,
right? Like, I'm here to have a good conversation with people. This is partly like, this podcast isn't just for me, or I'm sorry, other way around. It isn't just for other people. It's for me. Like, I love this. I love connecting with Clay. I love connecting with Henna. Me and Kyle, like, we get to connect every single week and talk. You know, it's an opportunity. That's what podcasts are. It's like, it's an opportunity to connect with not only the information, but the people that you want to have discussions with. And I value learning. That's one of my values. So, you know, looking into what this podcast really means to me is it's an opportunity for me to learn, you know, and that's why, you know, Clay, you give a perspective that, sure, we agree on some things, but you also give a perspective I don't know anything about. I don't, you know, disability is not something that it's not my wheelhouse. I've certainly had moments where, you know, I've been, you know, not capable of doing things. Like, I've had ACL reconstructions, and I was on crutches for weeks, but I don't know what it's like to have muscular dystrophy, or to have certain other issues that would make me disabled. Right. So what I really want today, Clay, is for you to give us your perspective. Tell us everything that you can about what it's, you know, not just what it's like, but what people can do to help you in terms of physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, you know, and how can they help disabled people, you know, fit in? Because that's, like, realistically, like, that's, culture doesn't like weird people to fit in, and for some reason, you know me, like, mental health is taboo. It's weird. We don't want to talk about it. Disability is almost even worse, right? You have a disability, like, nobody wants to deal with that. Nobody wants to help you. Nobody wants to talk about it. And, you know, how can we do it? How can we help? How can we talk about this?
Well, I think for one, it's just do your research for sure about disability rights. Like, it's almost as volatile as the civil rights movement in the United States. That's been going on for years, but has really been magnified now. Like, it's about equal as a struggle. And of course, I don't know what it's like to be a Black man or a Black woman and experience it for skin color, but I'm still a minority, even though I'm a white person, because I'm disabled. Like, right. And 1 in 7, we're the biggest minority in the world. Like, 1 in 7 people are disabled. And I think just do your research and just, you know, try to, like, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but watch podcasts like mine to see, you know, what you can learn. And just a lot of it is just, again, research and just watching things with people with disabilities. Like, I think about even movies, like, most roles that are disabled people are played by able-bodied people. Right. And it's like, well, that's not really helping the stigma. You know, how do they know what it's like? They could do all the research and live with someone with a disability all they want, but they don't know what it's like to live like that. Right. It's not the easiest question for me to answer, but it's just, it is getting better. I can say that much. There's a movie on Netflix called Crip Camp, and it's about Judy Human. She is from New York City. She's got polio. She had polio, and she is partially paralyzed from that. And she was part of the whole movement in the States. Don't remember what year. It's the 80s, somewhere in the 80s. And her and a bunch of people with disabilities went to, I think it was San Fran, I don't know, one of the cities in California, and they all just sat there in their wheelchairs for like 6 days. They had PSWs taking care of them. They said, "We're not moving until you pass a law that makes us equal." Like it's not okay. We're no different than anybody else. We just do things differently.
Right.
And that movie is amazing. I recommend it to everybody.
And that was Crip Camp, you said?
Yeah.
Well, I'll put that in the description. Make sure that gets in there.
Definitely, because that even taught me things I didn't know, which is I live with a disability every day and I didn't know some of this stuff. So very, very interesting take. And it's even the Black Panthers helped them out. Like they sent a care package for food and medical supplies and stuff to help them through that, because 6 or 7 days as a disabled person without a hospital bed or assistive devices is not an easy thing to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such a, like I talk about a taboo subject of suicide, right? Like suicide's a very difficult thing to explain. It's a difficult thing to discuss openly, because it's just this stigma, these feelings, right? But I can't imagine how hard it is for you to just address the obvious for yourself with people that don't have a clue what is going on with you, right? Like I mean, tell us about that struggle. Like what is it like to try and explain to people that have never seen what you have to go through on a day-to-day basis? Like what do you have to deal with those kinds of people?
It's a lot of it's pity, to be honest. The people that don't know are like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Well, like I say all the time, like, and this is a little dark, but my humor is very dark. You know firsthand. But I'm like, well, you didn't mutate my genes. Like, what are you sorry for? That there's nothing to be sorry about. I was born this way. I won a genetic mutation lottery, is the way I see it. Like, big deal. It's just a disability. Like, I'm not saying get over it, because it's not that easy. It's like people say with depression, well, get over it, be positive. Well, if there's a chemical imbalance or something in your DNA that's causing that, you can't just turn it off and on. It doesn't work that way. But a lot of it too is people parking in the wheelchair spot. And it's like, you don't realize how angry that makes me. It's like, what are you doing? Like that is specifically, how do you know someone in a wheelchair is not going to come by and need that spot? Like and there's been so many instances of people getting up in my parents' faces saying, "Oh, what are you going to do?" Well, you deal with that every day, unfortunately. And it's the people that don't understand, though, I try to educate them. I don't get personal or mean to them, because they don't know, they're ignorant. Like Gary Vee said, I'm sorry to hear that when I said I was disabled, but I truly believe he was testing me. He's smarter than the average person. And I don't think, I'm not saying he doesn't feel bad or feel empathy for me, but I don't think he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like, I think he was seeing how I reacted to it.
Mm-hmm.
And my response was, whatever, it is what it is. Just keep going. Like, I don't have any other choice. Yeah. And a lot of things I tell people too is, some people say, "Oh, I don't know how you do it." Well, I don't have a choice. What do you mean you don't know how I do it? I have to.
Right.
If I don't deal with it, then my quality of life just goes down, honestly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. Like every time we talk, it's always remarkable how similar the experience is from mental health to disability.
Definitely.
Because it's so similar to hear one, get over it, because you're ignorant to what I have to go through, or like whatever. The plethora of other things that we have to deal with in terms of any of these situations is, it's ridiculous. but it's so interesting to see the similarities in our stories, you know, and that's something we talked about in our first Instagram live, but it always brings me back. It's remarkable to hear how you deal with things in terms of like, yeah, I'm disabled. Like, you don't have to fucking apologize for it. And I'm sitting here like, yeah, my dad committed suicide. Like, you don't have to fucking apologize for it. You know, like we deal with things so very similar, and we're so like it's amazing. What I love is finding people that regardless of situation, they have the same line of thinking as me. And I think that's the most remarkable part about all of this is that you having a completely different story than me, we both have the same thoughts, right? Don't apologize to me. I don't need your fucking pity. I don't need you to be sorry. I don't need you to look at me like I'm any less of a person because someone else made a choice or my genes were mutated by whatever. Like, I'm a human fucking being and treat me accordingly.
Exactly. And I think a lot of it too, like growing up, you see like parents and the kids are curious and the parent will just like shush their kid. It's like, well, it's great that the kid wants to ask me why I'm in a wheelchair. That's empathy at a very young age to ask. I'm just curious why, like, not what's wrong with you, but I'm just curious why you use your wheelchair. And I would just tell the kid, you know, my muscles are weaker than yours, and that's basically what muscular dystrophy is. I don't have dystrophin, which means I can't build the muscle. Right. And that's it. And the kids would be like, oh, interesting. And then they just like, you know, ask whatever buttons do on my chair, like a kid does. And it's like, I love when kids do that. I think that's a great quality. As long as it's not like, what's wrong with you or whatever, like that just comes across as condescending. But if you say, I'm just curious, why are you in a wheelchair, sir, or whatever, I'm just like, I'm fine with answering that. Like when I was younger, I didn't really get it. Like my buddy and I used to tell people take a picture, it lasts longer when they were staring, but it's like, that's rude at this age now. Like I was 10 years old. I didn't know any better. I didn't even know why they were staring at such a young age. Like I knew I was disabled, but you don't really fathom what the disability is. And like, I don't think I fully accepted it till I was 19 or 20 at least. Like, I'm not saying I was miserable, but I wasn't fully okay with being disabled. But now it's like, I don't even really think about it. I'm alive. I've got my own place. Like I'm just like you or Kyle or any of my friends. I just use a wheelchair to get around. That's literally it.
You're just badass Clay. That's it.
Just a dude living his best life.
Yeah, I'm just a dude in a wheelchair being a dude. Yeah.
Pretty much. It's like living the dream. My friend Mike always says, I'm living the dream. It's not my dream, but it's somebody's dream. Like, you know?
That's true. Somebody in a coma probably thinking about like, man, I wish I was in a wheelchair walking around or something like that.
Exactly. And the perspective of someone always has it worse is ignorant in ways, but it's also, it's not wrong. Like there's always somebody who has it better and somebody who has it worse than you. It's like being a professional athlete. There's always people better and there's people not as skilled as you. It's just the way life is. Like it's all situational completely.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's always something that that I hear. You know, I'm in an interesting part of like TikTok and Instagram and seeing these different things, but you know, it's not beneficial to tell someone struggling with something that you could have it worse. That's ignorant. But if you put it in the right perspective, you can absolutely show people in a moment of struggle that there are better ways, or there are things that could happen that haven't happened, that you know that they can take small victories from. And it's interesting that you bring that up because it's, you know, it's definitely something that people struggle with, is that one of the things people say to them is, oh, you could have it worse. And you know, I think it's all balanced. It's like you can't always say get over it and you could have it worse. But if you put it in the right context, which is kind of what I do, like my job is really to take these things that people are telling them outwardly and wrongly in some ways, and in some ways it's quite abrasive. I take these things and I put them into perspective, and I deliver them in a much finer, cleaner package of, I don't tell people to get over it, but there are certain things that I have to explain, that you don't have the luxury, right? Like, let's say we're at war, you don't have the luxury of having emotions when you're getting shot at. That's just the reality, right? I'm not telling you to get over it, but I am explaining the perspective and the situation and the matter. Like, you've got to do your job. You've got to step up and you've got to shoot back, or you're gonna or run. Like, and if you run, well, guess what? There's repercussions for that. So the best thing that you can do is stand up and shoot. I don't even care if you shoot at the enemy, just shoot somewhere in the vicinity. And and this can go, there's so many different examples of this, but it's all about delivery, right? Like, what I think one of the biggest things that we're lacking in society right now is understanding how to deliver a message. How do we deliver the words that we're talking about? Like, if you don't understand words, like, you're going to hurt people. I mean, it's so simple. As obvious as it sounds, it's such a failing in society today, is that we deliver words to hurt people, or we deliver words to be right. We deliver words to prove people are wrong. And like, let's be real. There's a whole lot of things that are not right or wrong. And we just try and make them right or wrong. And it's such a...
Well, it's like living your life. There's no right or wrong way to live.
Right.
Like, you make choices that, and my dad always used to tell me, like, when you make a choice, you could know it's a bad choice 20 years from now. You could know it's a bad choice 30 seconds from now. Same can go with a good decision. Like, sometimes it takes years to realize if you were doing it the way it should have been done. And even then, there's so many different alternatives to the decisions you make. Like, and you say, like, using words, people just fight now. Like, they hide behind a computer screen and they type at people. No one talks in person anymore. Like, yeah, we're on Zoom right now, but we're talking. We can see each other. We're not texting where you can, take something out of context. And I think that's a huge problem nowadays.
Right.
Someone texts somebody something instead of calling them to talk to them anymore. Like, especially arguments. I notice people arguing through text. Like, how do you know what that person's tone is through
right.
a word?
Yeah.
Like, come on. It's not as simple as just texting somebody, but I think everybody thinks social media is real when it's not. It's not reality. It's a delusion, really.
Yeah, it's just it's a form of communication, but it is not a deep form. It's only it like, realistically, it's only a form of aesthetic connection, which is not, like, certainly some of my videos hit deep with people, but that's because they choose to take it deeply, right? And realistically, I don't know them. I don't know anything about them. I'm just hitting at the heart of human emotion. That's what I do. But I don't know you, right? So if you choose to take it deep, that's on you. Some people push for that, but realistically, when you look at, like, me on TikTok, I have 420,000 followers. I don't know that many. I don't know 420,000 people, right? So when they think I'm talking directly to them, like, I'm trying to talk to the human in them, but I don't know who I'm talking to. And we get kind of lost in this just because we can see them. We think, like, we're a part of them, or we're a part of that connection, and it certainly confuses people. And I love what you said about texting. Like, Albert Mehrabian in the 1970s, and sometimes this is misquoted, but this is it. Like, this is the perfect time for this. Is that 55% of human communication is through nonverbal body language, and this is when connecting via emotion, right? So it's not like a work situation where I need you to do this, blah, blah, blah. No, this is like a emotional conversation. 55% of our communication is nonverbal. 38.
Yeah, people always misquote it as higher than 55%. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's actually like all communication.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah. So like, and then on top of that 55%, 38% is tone. So overall, it's somewhere between 7 and 10% of all communication is the actual message. And I shouldn't say all communication, emotional based messaging.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean.
You are like through texting, you are potentially losing out on 90% of communication when you're talking about something emotional, which is remarkable that like people don't understand that or people don't respect that. You know, like text is such a huge part of society today, but we don't understand anything about the communication that we're actually using. It's remarkable.
Definitely. And it's like you say, it's like that's total is like 93%. It's like you're literally, you don't know anyone through a text message. Like you see all this online dating now, and during the pandemic, it's become video chatting, which I think is a lot better than texting someone. Mm-hmm. How do you know who they are? You have no idea. You could be getting scammed. Like, who knows? Like, you just don't know. Like you say, 420,000 followers. I don't remember what the total is, but I think science has determined, like, I think you can only know up to 100 people in a deep emotional way. Right. And anything above that are just acquaintances. You may talk to them at work, but you're not their friend. You just work with them. Like, yeah, and don't get me wrong, you can make friends at work. I know a lot of people that have made some of their best friends at work, but it generally they're acquaintances, and holy shit, it's like, why are you arguing through a text message? Right. Go meet over coffee, call them at least. Like, yeah, you just don't know.
Yeah, I think that's Dunbar's number. Like I think it's 150 or so is like the maximum that humans can really connect with. You know, where you can actually really know those people. You know, and it's an open to interpretation kind of thing where like, some people have more, some people have less, but it's tribalism in a sense, is that we can't really like fit more like too many people into our lives to where we connect with them. You know, like one of the reasons that the army is structured in the way that it is, you know, it's fundamentally team focused, and the most people that you will ever have underneath you is 4. That's it. Like you can't, like you are directly in charge of 4 people at the most, and then everything below them, right? Like there's 4 people in a team, right? So the squad leader has 2 team leaders that manage those 3 people in their team, right? So like, sure, a squad leader's in charge of the 9-man squad, one being themselves, but realistically, they only have to deal with the two team leaders. Now it gets kind of, you know, sketchy in there. Like obviously, some squad leaders are a little bit more intrusive and micromanagement focused than others, but you know, you go to the next level and you're talking platoon sergeant, and he's in charge of 4 squad leaders. That's it. Like that's how the structure works. Is like you cannot step outside of that, and you can't manage 30 dudes as a platoon sergeant. You have to manage 4 and allow them and trust them to manage the rest. And you know, like that kind of just stacks on with Dunbar's number. Like you can't manage more than 150 relationships. Let's be real. Like some of us, you can't even manage 10. You know, like how many people do you, like right now I'm working from home. Like how many people do I see in person? My wife and son. I don't see anybody in person, right? I do Zoom calls with, you know, 10, 15, 20 clients a week, but I don't know everything about them. I can't even pretend to know everything about them. That's a lot of people, and that's a lot of stuff to work through. You know, like we as human beings have to almost expect that we are going to get it wrong, that we are ignorant, that we are, We are not going to know the people that are in our lives. And it just has to be an expectation that we're going to miscommunicate things. And we have to create the openness. This is what I think is really tough about right now, like relationships wise, is that we have to create the understanding that we are going to fail at communication. And we just don't. Like, companies don't do it, right? Families don't do it, right? Like, husbands, wives don't do it. Yeah, fathers and mothers don't do it. Like, it's just it's tough, man. Like, communication is expected to be perfect, and it just can't be.
No, definitely not. I agree for sure with that.
But yeah, I mean, oh man, what should we talk about? We talk about all sorts of stuff.
So can you describe a time where throughout your process of understanding your disability that you've had some struggling moments, and how did you get through it?
One, and the major one that comes to mind is, so with Duchenne, you walk for a short period. Like, there's people that have walked well into their 20s with Duchenne. Like, just for context, Enzo Ferrari's son Alfredo had Duchenne. He died at 26, which is very young, but there wasn't much known about disability. He pretty much walked till the day he died. But for me, I walked until I was 12. The main thing that really sticks out to me is the first, I'd say 2 years, maybe a year of not walking was one of the major struggles. Like, as a young boy, when you're in grade 7, 8, gym class was like one of my favorite things to do. So they had to give me, like, I would be the referee in basketball or football or whatever, or I would have my own testing when I was like leading up to not walking. Like, I could still get out of my chair when I couldn't walk, but it was not for very long. Like, gym class, when they did like gymnastics, I would go one-on-one with my gym teacher and show her what I could do. And she would grade me on my, like, basically what I could do. It's like kind of like the whole scenario of if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, well, it's not going to go too well. So not walking was hard. And when you're just 12 years old, you're getting interested in girls, you're thinking about what you might do after high school. Like, it was really hard for me to kind of adjust to that, because even though I knew since I was 10 what my disability would do, you can't really prepare someone for it. You kind of have to take it as it comes, and it was just so hard. But then I'd say once about college is when I accepted that fact of, you know what, like, I can still lead a great life. Like, it's not about walking. There's, your brain can do more than you can physically. So what's there to worry about? So yeah, not walking is a huge one. I would say was a struggle.
I get that completely.
Do you ever miss it?
Yes, but not as often as I used to. Like I said, I'm 28 now. I stopped walking when I was 12. Like, I'm now over half my life in a wheelchair completely. So not really. I mean, yeah, it would be nice to get up and cook or shower on my own or whatever, but like, it is what it is. I've got PSWs and a very supportive family that help me with those things. So I don't really think about it. One really interesting tidbit: when I dream, I'm able-bodied. It's the strangest thing.
Interesting.
I've only had like 3 dreams to my memory being in a wheelchair. It's quite crazy.
How interesting. Wow. That's kind of cool.
It is. It's very cool. And I'm a very vivid dreamer. I always have been. And some of the dreams are pretty cool.
Kyle, do you dream?
I do.
Man, I don't think I've had a dream since I was probably 7.
Because you don't get REM sleep.
That's true. That's not a.
So Dylan and I have had this conversation before, and he's lucky to maybe get 20 minutes, 30 minutes of REM sleep a night.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
That's true. Well, it's getting a little. Well, I haven't actually used the watch to track it.
Yeah.
But I do get more sleep. Now that
it's a
I'm
miracle.
Home.
It's a miracle.
Well, it's just I don't know exactly what it like. This is my guess, right? sleep wise, I am very like situational with my sleep. So like if I'm doing army stuff, I don't fucking sleep. Right? Like I'm just that kind of on edge in a sense because it's just the environment. So like I've been doing military stuff the past, 2-3 years. And my sleep was just all sorts of jacked up because there's no routine. Like the military will never allow you to get into a routine. It's just the way it is. That's life, and it hates you. So you have to kind of work that shit out. And now that I'm home, I am actually able to get more sleep. I am like, especially being with my wife, right? Like that is my comfort, right? And being around her, allows me to sleep better. It allows me just like just a more comfortable, especially routine. Like I have a schedule now.
Yeah.
I don't, obviously I go to drill and then I come back and it's all messed up for a couple of days, but then I come back into that routine and it's good for me. So, for those of you that are worried about me, I do sleep well now that I'm home, and it's actually like I'm actually getting like 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep now. Every once in a while, I'll break up, obviously with drill, but it's better. It's better. But I don't
I cannot imagine not having a schedule. Being in a assistive care building, it's like we are all on a schedule. There's like 50 some odd people that live in this building, and like 30 of us have the in-house PSWs that are here 24/7. And if I didn't have a schedule, I think I'd lose it. I'm way too organized to not have one.
Yeah, we in the military, it just we can't have a schedule sometimes because guess what? You don't work. You work around the enemy sometimes, and sometimes the enemy's COVID, sometimes the enemy's the Taliban or ISIS or whatever. But like you have to do what you got to do,
or a classroom PowerPoint
that had to that Department of Defense dropped, and you gotta do it now, kind of thing. So yeah, it's the military can suck sometimes, and it will suck the life out of you if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's like I listen, and not a lot of people think this guy's controversial, but Joe Rogan had Marcus Luttrell on about a month ago, and I listened to that, and he's like, it's just a clusterfuck. Like it's you just can't be on a schedule. You don't know when you're going to get ambushed or when a mortar strike's going to happen or when as they had to do, jump off a fucking cliff, which I could not imagine. Like the whole story is insane, but he was like, it's just how it is. You rest when you can, but most of the time you don't sleep because you're just ready. You have to be. You can't really get full REM sleep or else you're kind of screwed.
I very much relate to that. Very much so. And that's obviously, I've been through trauma. So that didn't start in the Army. It started well before. But the Army certainly didn't help me get through it or make it better. So yeah, I mean, I can't, you almost have to look at it in terms of the Army is going to take that away from some people, but it's also going to inhibit people from recovering from trauma in many ways. And that's one thing that I'm starting to see more with when I'm talking to veterans is that the Army, or I should say the military, you enter the military with all sorts of problems, and the military will grind you up, right? It's just a big meat grinder, and it will grind you up until you don't recognize what is up, what is down, what is healthy, what is unhealthy, and it spits you out in the end, and it tells you you've got to figure out your life. Here's a whole bunch of resources. Here's a fire hose full of resources. But we also taught you to remain silent and don't ask for help because you'll bring down the team. So don't do that. But here's all these resources that you really need to check and look into and do it all. And oh, by the way, bye. And we'll just leave you with PTSD and all these things that you got to figure out. 100% disability. There you go. Good luck. Have a great life.
Pretty much, and it's like Chris Kyle's book. Like, he was just addicted to it. Like, he went home, he didn't even know the hell he was anymore. Yep. His wife didn't know who he was. He didn't even know his kid. Unfortunately, he got killed once he was out of duty anyway. But he said, when I wasn't out in the field, it was just a shit show. Like, he was addicted to it. You can kind of see why people get addicted to it, though. It's like, simple. Then you're just sitting there and you're just thinking about the people that died in your regiment, maybe, or the people you had to kill, which that book you've described in the past, On Killing, I've always wanted to read that, just to see like the psychology behind having to kill someone for your country. Like, it's definitely not sunshine and rainbows, that's for sure.
Nope. Yeah, I mean, On Killing is, if you're in the military or planning on going into the military, I think On Killing should be a mandatory read, especially infantry. It's something I recommend to my guys to read and understand, because it's not as easy as you think it is, and the body literally doesn't, if you've never trained for it, the body will literally, tell you whether you can do it or not, and it won't be something that you're ready for. Some people can in the moment, some people can't, right? There's the freeze response, the flight response, the feign response, where you're just there, right? You just wait, you subordinate, or you intimidate, or you run. Some people, that response is really up to their training. So it's all very interesting. It's such the military is such a fickle thing. So much to think about, and so little knowledge within the military is designed and supported, or built for supporting soldiers and understanding how to really live with what they've been taught, and not only that, but live with what has happened to them prior to and during. There's all sorts of resources, and it's great, but it doesn't incentivize or show soldiers how to take away that portion of the training that says, don't say anything, because you'll just bring down the team. You can't just change that habit overnight and say, here's your DD 214, get out of the military and go on with your life. It's just not that simple.
Yeah, a lot of what you're talking about too reminds me of like being disabled. Like, nothing's going to prepare you for it until it happens. Like, mine's genetic. Like, I knew, like, I didn't know, my parents knew. I was too young to understand, but I knew it was coming. Whereas somebody like my friend John, like, paralyzed. He was an all-star athlete, like, and all of a sudden he needs to relearn how to walk all over again. And eventually he wasn't able to relearn it, but he is one of the most positive people I know. And it's like, he was an all-star athlete, like, and all of a sudden he's drunk one night and he falls down a staircase, breaks his neck. That's it. It happened in the blink of an eye, and that's it. There was no preparation for it. It's like, here's your rehab. Okay, there you go. You've been discharged. Figure it out. It's like, oh, geez, it's not that easy. Nothing's that easy, but I think that's why we connected. It's like you say, it's a totally different life, but very similar emotions and teachings through that. And I think that's the main reason we are such good friends, is like you say, totally different scenario, but very similar in feeling. And I think that's why I've always related to veterans. I've always appreciated veterans, no matter what war or what battle they were in. It's like, you guys are all doing this to help our freedoms, to protect that, and let us live the way we live. And it's like, holy shit. Imagine Germany would have won World War II, where we'd be. Like, I wouldn't be here. They euthanize disabled people. Like, I just wouldn't be here. I'm useless to society if they win, basically. Which I do think about a lot. Like, it's like, holy shit. Like, just 70 years ago, I would have been killed because I couldn't help society. It's like, that's not very long ago. That's a drop in the bucket, really.
So I got a question about that. How do you deal with those kinds of thoughts of the inadequacy or the you know, whether it's the reality or not of how do you deal with the thoughts of I'm useless to society, or maybe not even the thoughts, but maybe the comments on social media or the comments in person of people being like what are you good for? How do you deal with that?
Well, luckily I haven't had to deal with it too much. Like I've obviously had the trolls on the internet, like,
Certainly.
oh, you're like, even a year ago when COVID first hit, he's like, oh, you're high risk, you should stay inside, but nobody else should. Like everybody who's not high risk should do what they want. And I was like, well, no, I'm just as equal as you are. Like there's no difference. You could become disabled in 5 minutes, dude. Like that's like the most ignorant thing. But honestly, that's a hard one for me to answer now because, like I said, I've totally accepted it. Like, I don't think I'm useless very often, but like as cliche as it sounds, I just will throw on some music I like, or rewatch some of my podcasts to show like, okay, I am making a difference. I am doing something. Like, there's able-bodied people that provide less to society than me. So
Yeah.
really just do something that I like while I'm feeling that way. Play video games, talk to a friend, vent to someone. Like I've got lots of friends that I can just vent to at random and they're totally okay with it. So it's really hard for me to give advice or say how I deal with it because I've come to accept it. Like it barely ever crosses my mind, if at all, anymore.
Which is awesome. I mean, I know I don't ask you that to push into, I don't know. I don't even know where I was going with that, but I mean the reality is like those thoughts are going to happen, right? Like, you know,
Absolutely.
some of the biggest influencers on the planet have imposter syndrome. Like they think they're not what they are, you know, they're not having the impact that they are. Like some of like, you know, in the first few years after I almost committed suicide, it was certainly something that I still thought about. You know, I don't, you know, like you, I don't think about that anymore. I don't think about that thought like I used to. I honestly don't remember the last time I thought about taking my own life. Has to be 3 or 4 years now. But in the immediate aftermath, it was certainly something that was still on my mind. And the reality is that those thoughts are potentially going to happen again. And I think it comes down to your perspective, whether when those things happen, when those thoughts happen, or when those comments are made, or when those, you know, when those situations come up where, you know, you recognize whether it's reality or not, that those thoughts are there. It's based on your perspective, how you actually respond to them. You know, I think it's really profound when you especially are able to look at these things and say, like, I don't give a shit whether I'm, you know, useless or not to you, but I know something. I'm providing some kind of value, right? Because like realistically, Clay, like you're a hero to someone out there that is struggling with muscular dystrophy for the first time. They're looking at your podcast and they're saying, "Wow, this helps. This makes a difference." Like you're a fucking hero, and when I know you don't like to recognize that, just like I don't like to recognize when people say, you know, Dylan, you're a hero, whether it's for military or for helping people overcome suicide. But like we don't get to decide whether we're heroes or not. It's not up to us. It's up to the people that look at us and say, you're a hero. You know, and that's I just want to make sure that you understand that you are, you know, you are a hero and that you are making a difference, and that's fucking awesome. And this is why, you know, you're here with me today, because I love what you do. But I just want to say that, and I think that was necessary.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I know that there are people that look up to me. Like when I was in high school, I volunteered every day after school. Like you have to volunteer. I don't know if it's the same in the States, but you have to volunteer a certain amount of hours to graduate from high school. So I couldn't just go home on my own and just be in the house by myself. So I would go and volunteer with children. Mm-hmm. And it was through the YMCA after school program at my elementary school that I transitioned into high school from. And I could tell that I made a difference with those kids. Like at first, you're 14 years old, 15 years old. You don't know, you've got a bit of an ego about you and all that. But then it kind of brought me down to earth to say, you know what? I just taught hundreds of kids that being disabled is normal. There's nothing wrong with it. And a lot of those kids really liked me, and they saw me as Clayton, not as the guy in the wheelchair. Like, and it did take a lot of self-reflection to not think, oh, I suck. Oh, I'm useless. But we all suck. Everybody sucks. Like, most people are terrible at most things. There's only a few things that most people are really good at. And I truly think I found my calling. If I help one person's perspective with those podcasts, I'm happy. I'm not doing it for my own gain. And I've met 43 amazing people through it. So, I know that I'm making a difference, but it did take a long time to realize that. I think it's normal for everybody, though. I don't think that's just a disabled community problem. I think that's an everybody problem.
What's that?
Well, not realizing that you do have potential. I think everybody goes through the struggle of, am I doing anything for society? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? It's not just a disabled thing. It's an everybody thing.
That's why I asked. It's an everybody thing, right? And it's important to see, your perspective on it, because you're in a situation where people actually do look at you and say you're worthless to society, because I've seen it. And whether it's right or wrong doesn't matter. The fact is that exists as a stigma. It's like looking at depressive people and saying you're lazy. It's not always true. Certainly it can be true for depressed people, but more often than not, I'd say like 95% of the time, it's not true. There's things that prevent you from doing that. And saying that Clayton is not useful to society is like calling depressed people lazy. Right? It's not fair. It's not right, but it's a stigma, and that's what we're here for. We're talking about stigmas, and we're talking about getting rid of them and working past them. So yeah, man.
Absolutely. And I interviewed, you might not know who this is. It's mostly a person known by the disabled community, but Caroline Casey, she's from Ireland. She's a disability advocate. Holy shit. So I'm going to say her story because it's insane. Like it's unfathomable. So she has vision loss. She's legally blind, and she got diagnosed at a very young age, but her parents hid it from her. They didn't tell her she was blind. And she went through life, was doing normal things, riding bikes, practicing driving with her father, even though she can barely see. She thought that's what vision was until she was like, oh God, I think 19 years old or 18 years old.
17.
It is, it's wild. Yeah, 17. And so she went 17 years being basically fully blind and didn't even realize until she was 17 that her parents were hiding it from her. And she's one of the biggest disability advocates on the planet. She took influence from the Fortune 500 and made a company called the Valuable 500. And her goal is to get 500 signatures from major corporations to accept and hire disabled people. Because, like I said, 1 in 7 people are disabled. Like, we have a huge intangible value to help the economy. Like, we buy cell phones and video games and cars and everything just like everybody else. we just use them differently. So like, she is amazing. She is like, I was blown away that I got an interview with her. Like, she's just,
that's pretty cool, man.
Such a cool lady. And she went to India and became an elephant handler. And she was the first woman from the Western world to become an elephant handler. And she's, again, completely legally blind. It's quite amazing. Like, nothing stops her. And she really liked me. And I was like, I'm not worthy of your value of me. Like, you think I'm amazing. Like, you're just, that's next level. Like, imagine going 17 years thinking that being basically blind is normal. And she didn't admit it to the world till she was like 27, 28 years old.
That's really interesting. Like, because I feel very passionate about this part. I feel like that's how we should treat mental health and mental illnesses in children. You should not inform a child that they have anxiety or depression or bipolar
until they're old enough to
exactly
fully understand it.
Right? You should absolutely support them, right? Like, I think, this is going to require, right? You want to talk about massive changes in the world. You're going to have to like teach parents how to develop and implement trauma-informed care, which is a task at hand. But I think if you inform a child of their limitations, then they will abuse them. But if you inform a child of only their potential, they will prosper in so many infinite ways. And if you stop containing your child, right, whether it's mental illness or disability or anything, right, communication could be fucking anything, then you have doomed your child to create limitations on life. And that child is not going to find their way through life as effectively as they really should. And I really think that's such an interesting story. And I would love to see that repeated especially with mental health.
Definitely.
Don't inform your child that they have ADD or ADHD. Just support them and tell them when they can understand what that is.
Yeah, like my mom, so this is not contradicting what you're saying, but it's a little different, is my mom put a manual wheelchair in the corner of the room, our living room, when I was 7.
Yep.
She didn't tell me what it was for, but it definitely made me realize as I got older, I think if my mom didn't do that, like if she would have told me straight up, it probably would have scared the shit out of me.
Right.
At 7, I'd run to my room crying. Like that's how a kid would respond. But to kind of etch it into my brain slowly, I believe saved me. Like I know so many disabled people that are in complete turmoil all the time, and they hate themselves. It's like, why am I disabled? Why does the world hate me? Well, sorry to say, but the world doesn't hate you. You just got a bad hand, but you have to play it.
Yep.
And trust me, throughout the pandemic, it's really shown. I've seen a lot of people's true colors in really how bad and ignorant people can really be. Like, holy shit, like that guy telling me I'm not as important as an able-bodied person. I should stay inside during the pandemic, but you shouldn't. That doesn't make any sense. Like that just shows that you have no idea what it's like, or what my life's value is. Like you're basically saying I'm invaluable to society. And I just commented back nicely and said, while I respect your opinion, it's not right. You're being very discriminatory, and more people are disabled invisibly than they are visibly. Right. And you could become disabled at any point in your life. And I just said, like, I hope that, I've I've kind of changed your perspective a little bit and take care. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, fuck you, buddy. Like, I don't see any point in being negative back. I can just use reverse psychology and just tell them, like, anything can happen, dude. Just remember that. It can happen whenever, and you will have no control over it. And I think you're right, though. To openly tell a young child that they're disabled is like, okay, what are you trying to prove? They won't understand what you're saying. Wait till they're at least preteen, which is when I found out. I was about 12.
Nothing but class, Clay.
Yep.
Love it. Nothing but class.
Kill them with kindness. Let's go.
I love it. Empathy.
Exactly. And like, I just don't have I don't have time for negativity anymore.
Mm-mm.
Like, I feel like an old man saying that, but it's like, I just don't. Like, yeah, I will throw shade at all my friends all the time, but those are my friends. Like, we're not being negative, we're just bantering with each other. And I think, you know, like the other day, my friend, he moved to Mexico because Canada's still, like, Ontario is complete stay-at-home order. Like, the States is starting to reopen, a lot of other countries are, but we're still, don't go out, like, just stay home as much as you can. He moved to Mexico in the northeastern or southeastern part, and there's like virtually no COVID. And I asked him yesterday how it was, and he's like, oh, you know, I go to the gym every day, laid on the beach. I'm like, oh, thanks. Yeah, 2 things I can't do. Rub it in, dude. And he's just like, I will. I'll just keep telling you how good it is down here. And it's like, people would say, oh, that's mean, but it's like, fuck that. Like, in our live, I said, and it was, I felt bad for a second. I was like, we were talking about something to do with choosing lifestyles. And I said, well, no one has a gun to your head. And Dylan was like, well, I had my own gun to my head. No one else did. Like, and it was like, that's dark, but that's just how military, disabled, and medical personnel work. It's that's just true. How we are. It's a coping mechanism.
Yep.
Yeah, I think in this podcast, eventually I'll get far more dark humor to come out. Oh yeah, because I don't think that kind of stuff has come out realistically. Not yet. In this podcast, it just did now. I find that funny. Like, sometimes I'll make dad jokes and stuff, and you know, people are like, especially people that know me for the first time, if they ever hear me say a dad joke, you know, like like my wedding, I told my wife, I'm like, I'm honestly really mad that my dad didn't show up, and she was like mortified. she didn't know that I was okay with all this and talking about it, making fun of it like that. Like, it's dark, but you know, it is what it is. And you know, if you can't have some kind of fun with it, if you can't have some kind of understanding of, you know, of lightheartedness in all of it, then like it's just going to be a struggle, and you just don't need that, you know?
Yeah, my grandpa's funeral, my dad did the eulogy, and the first thing he said was, "Dad, don't get up." It's like, and everybody in the family except a few were like, "Oh, that's harsh," like whatever. Like, the man was 95, like he lived a full life. Right. He, like, you see a lot of the suicide victims and a lot of chronic illness deaths in their 30s. Like, he lived 3 lives in some people's experience. Like, 95 is a hell of a run. Like, yeah, it sucks. I miss him every day because he taught me so much, because he was legally blind. So he did teach me a lot that I didn't even know until I was older. But it's like, that's a hell of a life. Like, and then my mom has worked in healthcare for 33 years. Like, she is dark, like, especially towards me. Like, I've got scoliosis, like my back is curved like 3 different directions. Yep. And my mom always goes, "Clayton, you're fucked up." and people would look like, "Oh my God, that's mean." But that's just how my mom and I work. And it's how we've always worked. Always.
My mom said those exact words to me.
So me and my coworkers, we always give each other shit. And then we were talking one day just about like Kurt Cobain and stuff like that. And my coworker's like, he didn't commit suicide. He just needed to clear his head out a little bit.
Savage. Oh man, that's savage. Oh man,
it's perfect though. Like it's just, but a lot of people think that's mean, but it's like you're not doing it to be personal. It's just a joke.
Right.
Like it's like comedians. Like now all the cancel culture is canceling comedians. Like
yeah, I don't agree.
They're comedians. That's their job to make you uncomfortable. Like
yeah,
it's life. Like cancel culture as well as it kind of reminds me of the communication thing.
Yeah.
It's like you're not going to teach anybody anything. Auschwitz is still standing for a reason, so history doesn't repeat itself. Like, what are you just gonna knock it down just because it offends some people? Like, things like that are there to teach you. They're not there to hinder you. And I think like dark humor, like, and we've discussed this before, Dylan, as well, is if you're using it every day all the time, that's unhealthy. But if you're using it occasionally, well, I think it's a great thing to have a sense of humor.
Absolutely.
It's a coping mechanism. Like coping is good. Coping is okay. You know, I like to say, I could be easily quoted with saying coping is bullshit. But here's my response to that is that it is bullshit if it's the only thing that you do, right? If all you do in your life is cope, right? That's why we talked about like if you're coping every single day with dark humor, there's probably something pretty unhealthy going on where you're not recognizing that's the thing that is keeping you going rather than really looking into the you know how to actually heal, you know, and that's where I say coping is okay in these singular moments, in these situations where you know as a group like us three, like we're having conversation, we're talking about pretty dark stuff, pretty deep stuff, and having that lighthearted nature is good. It's healthy. And we're not insulting anyone. We're not like no one here, at least I don't think, is insulted. I've put a gun to my head and I'm not insulted by some of the jokes that you just made. Right? Like I of all people, I should probably be the one that's insulted, but I'm not. Right? Like it just is a thing that can be allowed. Now, if it is insulting, that's when it needs to be addressed. Like, you know, if Kyle said something that insulted me and I say, hey, Kyle, let's not do that. Right. Cross the line. Right. And then when we understand that line, if we want to remain healthy, we don't cross that line again.
Right.
Now, if Kyle did it again, I'd probably be like, all right, podcast is over. And yeah, we're moving on. You know, like that's healthy boundaries. That's setting healthy boundaries. And then, you know, we're talking about relationships. That's so fundamentally important, is that you've got to understand where the limits are. Some people have limits and you've got to respect that, you know, certainly. Like cancel culture, I disagree with it as well, right? Because you have the freedom to not watch. You have the freedom to not go to these things. You have the freedom to stay away from things that you think are negative. And if you are put in a situation where you have to, which is pretty rare because you don't have to stay at a comedy show. You don't have to stay on the YouTube video that insults you. You could cancel or swipe, right? And there's this sense of entitlement that seems to be I don't even, what's the word, contagious almost, that it's because, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. There's so many things going on that people think they are entitled to, right? Like I don't have any stance on the mask mandate or anything like that, but here's just an example. People are entitled to wear a mask, or and on the flip side, people are entitled to not wear a mask because of, you know, different rules, right? Some people are fully entitled. They think that they don't have to wear a mask, and some other people think that everybody has to wear a mask. And there's this imposition of entitlement, like you have to do this, you have to do this, and both sides are fighting each other rather than coming to some kind of respect of, okay, you don't want to wear a mask, whatever. Now here's the thing, businesses are free entities, right? So they can say, hey, you've got to wear a mask. And it has nothing to do with the mandates that the government places upon them. That is like, why can't we just allow businesses to be the arbiters of their own business? Right? Like, you know, like the government can say, hey, we recommend a mask mandate. And then a business can say, we disagree. And then people don't have to wear a mask. And if you don't want to expose yourself, you don't go there, or you order online, right? But if you go and you know, if the person that doesn't want to wear a mask wants to go to a business that has a mask mandate, guess what? That business can throw you out. And whether you want to blow them up on social media, you can. But your rights don't matter on private property outside of the literal like written rights. So, you know, like whatever, like these things are not communicated. These things are not expressed in a healthy manner, and it just becomes this massive I don't even know, you know, just this war between people rather than an open discussion with the people that can actually make a difference. We're just fighting each other, right? Like this person that doesn't want to wear a mask attacks this person at Walmart that says, my boss told me that you have to wear a mask. And then they fight this person. Then the manager comes in and like, hey, this is what we've gotten from corporate. Like, and then it's just a war. And rather than address the people that can actually make a difference, you know, and I don't want to just pick on the people that don't want to wear masks, like the people that impose this stringent guideline of wearing masks every single place and everywhere is just as powerful, right? Like this imposition of entitlement is an actual problem. And like, you're just not entitled to tell people what the fuck to do. And you're also not entitled to tell businesses that they're wrong for imposing rules. Like, it's their business. And guess what? It's your body. So you get to make the choices with your body. But those choices, as Kyle always likes to say, comes with implications. They come with, you know,
consequences.
And
freedom of choice, not freedom of consequence.
Exactly. And that's like, understand what you're trying to do. Like if you want to send a message, okay, send a message. But you're not going to send a message to the person at Walmart telling you got to put a mask on, or you're not going to send a message to the people that aren't wearing masks. Like you're just not going to get through to those people,
right?
If you're going to be an asshole.
Exactly. And I think I'm not taking the shot at Americans because I've got many American friends. I love the States. Like
you can
all my freaking
you can take your shot, Clay.
Go all ahead. My sports and everything are American, but it's like I notice a lot of Americans say, "Oh, you're infringing on my rights." Well, it's like, well, yeah, you're the land of the free, but it's like you say, actions and decisions come with consequences. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're free to say and do whatever you want, but don't think you can just get away with anything. And I notice it's more of an American thing. Like here in Canada, like we're too nice. Like we're very passive aggressive though. Yes. Canadians are very passive aggressive. They'll say something in passing instead of directly at you. And to me, that's almost worse. Like you're beating around the bush. Like just tell me to fuck off. Like you don't need to beat around the bush. But I just notice a lot of those arguments about, and not just COVID, anything is all, oh, you're infringing on my rights and my freedoms. Well, am I? Like, you're not just free to do whatever you want, wherever you want. Like you say, businesses have a choice to mandate it or not. And if they have a mandate, you don't put a mask on, sorry, you have to leave. You don't have a right to be here. It's like, too bad. Like it's, you don't make the rules.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that simple, you know, and certainly like, and the problem therein lies how the government actually imposes this, right? Yeah. Because there are certain situations where governments take too much authority where they don't have it, and they say, everybody has to wear a mask. And then it becomes like this imposition of like, maybe you are infringing on rights or not. And then it's a legitimate question, and whatever, like that, like we could go on and on for days about that. But then like that's kind of like there's the problem, is how governments actually implement these situations. And COVID is, I think, a pretty interesting situation in general.
It's like, where does the buck of responsibility drop?
Right. Like it's just it really, I think COVID has really revealed a lot of weaknesses within both government and culture, and how the two are intertwined, because the two don't get along very well when it comes to pressure.
Yeah, definitely. And then, like you say, like COVID's really magnified even a lot of governmental things that are just totally wrong or unjust. Like so many things, especially here in Canada. Like it's just been.
Yeah, you guys have had a rough time, especially in Ontario.
Like it's like yeah, you guys have the highest case count because federal laws don't necessarily work state to state. Like you had Alabama still doing church when everyone else was locked down, and they had like thousands a day. Florida was another one. Like I don't know about Wisconsin, but a lot of the states, like there's 10 times, like people here often say, well, Americans are stupid. Well, there's 10 times as many people in the States, right? Like that means there's 10 times as many stupid people. Yeah. So it's very largely magnified by a lot of different things. And like, trust me, there's a lot of stupid people here. People always like to laugh at Americans, but it's like, are you check your own backyard and you'll see it. Like there's a lot of dumb people here. Like not everybody's smart. And most people aren't actually. And that's one thing I've learned as I've gotten older. And that's not a bad thing. A lot of it is ignorance, and it's but you have to be willing to educate yourself. It's not up to anybody else but you.
Honestly, we're all just winging it. Like we all fail to understand that this entire thing that we have, right? America, Canada, right? The European Union, right? Great Britain, Russia, China. We're all fucking winging it. There's a plethora of different systems around the world and within our countries that we don't know if they actually work. We just keep them around because we're comfortable with them. And certainly we could change them, but that doesn't mean they're going to work, right? It doesn't mean democracy's the right thing, or communism's the right thing, or socialism's the right thing. Right and wrong is I think fictive. It's absolute fiction, right? There is no right and wrong out there, right? What's right for Clayton is not the same as what's right for Kyle, and the same can be said of me, right? We are three completely different human beings, and we may have one system, right? Like let's say we actually agree on the education system, but the judicial system is completely fucked for all three of us. Like we may have points at which we intersect on all these things, but we're all just winging it because like we're humans. Right. We make mistakes. We build systems that have mistakes, and then we can't agree on how to address those mistakes because we're humans and we have different opinions. Like I wouldn't be surprised if over the next 15 to 20 years you start to see fragmenting of societies, where smaller offshoots of people that come together on things start to localize themselves, right? You're seeing it in California, you're seeing it in Texas, you're seeing it in Florida. Like I wouldn't honestly be surprised if a state seceded from the United States, Texas, right? Just an example. I think Texas could absolutely secede in the next 20 to 30 years. And then what happens, right? Like, and then what are they going to choose? They're going to build their own system that's focused around themselves, and it might work, right? Or they might get dominated by the United States military and held together, right? Who knows? But realistically, like, we are all winging it. Businesses are winging it. You know, some businesses are succeeding now, but will fail in 10 years. Some businesses will be powerhouses for the next 20 years, and they just have the right thing, but then all of a sudden it'll be a dry run for a couple of years or something like that. Like, we're all winging it. And because we constantly are adapting, especially with technology, we are advancing at rates that have never before been seen or understood. Like, we are not good at adapting so quickly. So things are going to get weird, right? Things are going to get different, and we're not all going to agree, and we're going to wing it for the next, 100,000, 200 million years, whatever, however long the human species, is able to sustain itself. But, like, we can't come to terms with the fact that we don't know what the fuck we're doing. And we need to.
Exactly. Nobody does. Like you say, you're winging it. Like that reminds me of the whole mentality of the American dream. Everybody has the potential and the opportunities to succeed, but it's up to you to go after them. It's not up to anybody else. Like, that's what the American dream, and I think it's very similar in Canada, is like, wing it and make your decisions based on what you think is right, and everybody can succeed, but not everyone's going to. And like you say, adapting. Nobody likes change.
Right.
There's just people that are better suited for change. And like technology, like I think, and again, it's never a good time to be disabled, but it's one of the best times we can live to be disabled. All the assistive technology now that we have, like power chairs that, if you have the strength, can stand you straight up, and you can drive in your wheelchair standing up to stretch your back, or whatever it is. Like, there's so many things that can help us now that it's the best time to be alive, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the American dream is an interesting situation to discuss, but it certainly does give opportunity. Maybe not fairly. Who knows? That's a discussion for another time. But you're not wrong about, like, now is the best time to be alive as a human being because of what's available. And I think that will continue to move forward until we see some kind of crazy some crazy transitions or transformations, maybe into another dark age. I don't know. I hope not. But, for sure.
Maybe to Mars.
For sure. Yeah. Like this, the technology that exists right now, like, is crazy how important it is to helping people and keeping people, going and surviving and living and stuff.
You think about all the free knowledge out there too that you could be grasping right now.
Yeah. Stuff that has not been available, right? Like, our generation, right? Us three, like, our generation has been gifted with seeing what happened before internet, seeing internet, and now seeing what's coming with internet. And we are like, millennials are seeing things that are truly fascinating. I know like Gen Xers too, but like, we lived in the formative phases of the internet.
Yep.
Like, we lived that, right? That is who we are. And I think our generation has a really profound perspective on what we're looking at. And it's going to be really interesting to see where that goes in the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah, and the technology aspect, like guys like Elon Musk, like, they're doing what they're doing to better society. Mm-hmm. He doesn't give a shit that he's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Like, the day he passed Bezos for like 24 hours, he tweeted, he's like, oh, that's strange. Well, back to work. Like, he doesn't care about what money he has. He just loves learning and building new shit. Like, he learned aerospace engineering and literal rocket science by reading. He doesn't have a degree in rocket science. He just read about it. And like,
yeah, just like,
don't get me wrong, he's a wealth of knowledge. Like, he can read a book and it's absorbed immediately, whereas the three of us would take 20 years to learn what he learns in a year. Like, it's insane.
Well, it's the same with me. Like, I don't have a degree in counseling or, you know, psychology or anything like that. I have sociology, but I help people without having a degree. And, you know, it's interesting because people come to me, like, this is what amazes me. People come to me that have had bad experiences with people with degrees and doctorates that were treated like dog shit. And then they find me, and I treat them with utmost dignity and respect. And I show them that a degree doesn't matter in helping people, right? Your counseling degree matters for nothing. Your doctorate matters for nothing in psychology if you can't treat people with respect. And then they find me and realize that, holy shit, like, this guy actually understands me and he can help me. You know, it has nothing to do with degrees. Degrees are bullshit, right? College is like, if people don't understand that college is not the thing that teaches you about life, then I don't know what rock you're living under, but you need to get with the program. Is that college doesn't teach you how to do the things in life that you need to do. College gets you, you know, like, college puts money in the bank for people that own colleges. Like, what's the reason for gen eds? Like, I still don't understand the full reason for gen eds. Like, it's a cultural and societal thing, right? Like, the trades don't have gen eds. The trades have your specific trade, and you need to learn it. Right. So you can experience and understand how to be the best version of that trade. And it's bothersome because people then go get these degrees that don't understand a thing about helping people, about really helping people, about how to have dignity, you know, how to have a conversation with dignity on both sides, how to have a conversation with respect and empathy. And then you get these doctors that, you know, these psychologists, and I'm not speaking against psychologists or psychiatrists or the mental health industry. I'm speaking against the bad doctors out there that have $500 an hour fucking copays that then tell their people instantly that they have this problem or this, or, like, you know, I can't treat you because you're triggering my trauma. These are not things that I've just, like, accumulated for no reason. These are real experiences. Right? Like, if you get triggered by someone else's trauma, you probably shouldn't be a fucking psychologist. Right?
Yep.
Maybe you picked the wrong line of work. You know, like, a degree doesn't help you help people. A degree doesn't do a damn thing for that. Experience, empathy, respect, dignity, these things give people the best response in helping people. And if you haven't figured that one out by now, fuck, man. Like,
you behind.
You behind. It's
C's get degrees.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, in psychology 101, that what does that teach you about fucking, you know, dealing with patients? You can get past that. It's not hard.
Well, it's like being a disability advocate. I don't have a degree in disability studies. Like,
right.
I live it. I don't need, like,
Clay,
and like you say, nothing against education, but you don't need it per se.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Clay, I don't think you're qualified to talk about disability. Let's be real. Like, come on.
You better go back to school.
Yeah, you better go back to school for a long time. Get that doctorate.
Let me go bust something else up real quick. Hold on.
Oh my God. Well, guys, what do we have? Clay, do you have any last words that you want to say or talk about?
I think we've touched on a lot, but Just a little bit of a plug. I would really appreciate if any of your followers check me out on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. I am just trying to change the world by educating about people with disabilities, and also people and don't get me wrong, like a lot of people on my podcast do not have disabilities. They're just allies of the disabled community. Like I would just really appreciate if people check me out, and don't forget cognizantclay.com as well. I have my own website. Like that's one of the first things I did when I started, because it's definitely easy just to kind of,
yep.
It's got all my interviews on it and everything. So
I will absolutely make sure that all of your links get into the description. So if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever, you're listening to it on Anchor maybe, they will all be in the link in the description. So make sure, please make sure you go check him out. Clay has been a great friend of mine since we met in 2020, and I think he'll be a great friend of mine until we both lay lifeless in the ground. But yeah, Clay, thank you so much. Appreciate you being on here and talking with us, and always a good conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks a lot, and nice to meet you, Kyle. It was good to chat with you.
Absolutely, you as well. Thank you for coming on. I like to end it off like I have my own little thing too. When we have people come on, what is your one quote that you live by every day?
That's a tough one. One of the main ones that stuck with me since grade 9, there was a guest speaker at my high school, is pain is inevitable, misery is a choice. Ooh, and yeah. That one is, I'd say, one of my number one quotes, because like you're gonna go through shit in life, but you can choose how you deal with those things. And I just think it speaks volumes. Like it's an old quote. It's an unknown origin. I'm not sure who said it, but I just think it's great. It's perfect.
No, that's amazing. Thank you.
That's good. That's rich right there.
Deep.
For sure. Well, alas, it has come. I'm gonna close this episode out. Guys, if you haven't done it already, if you want to join my inspirational text platform and get a chance to maybe feature a question or throw something on the podcast, throw your shout out on the podcast, text your question to 1-608-336-4480. Thank you so much for joining us this week. If you made it all the way through, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love talking to Clay. I love talking to, obviously having Kyle around and having these conversations are just so awesome. But next week, I have no idea what we're talking about, but we'll figure that out eventually. And we'll see you next time on The Dylan Experience.